and never stepped foot in that house in the spare room we were going to make a nursery. I actually started to remodel this room, and when I stripped the wallpaper, there were carvings in the wood. Things like, "Help me, they hear you." It was chilling, I'm not sure why. The most terrifying thing was when I got home from work one night. It was early for me, around 11:30. I'd just gotten into an argument with my ex, and I was feeling pretty down and pissed. Anyway, nothing was amiss when I got home. Driveway gate was locked, no alerts on my Ring camera. I get out of my truck and take a few breaths to clear my head. I hear her voice from the barn. "Andy?" I know it's her voice. I'm like, what is she doing here? I approach the barn, turn on the light, which only lights the doorway to the barn. I answer her and ask what she's doing here and get no answer. Then I started to think. I didn't get any alerts on my phone from the Ring, and I had talked to her about 2 hours ago. I have more of your guys' scary stories to share with you today, and this one is going to be quite terrifying, so turn on a light. I usually tell you guys to grab a snack because it's going to be a long one, but honestly, just turn on a light. That's all I'm concerned about this round. Story number 1. This was about last year, right after my grandfather had passed. I felt a negative energy feeding off of my grief and anxiety in my house for some time. I had a beautiful antique mirror I had gotten from my stepdad's old house. It's from the 1960s. It was on the ground as I hadn't had time to put it up, and then that night something felt off about it. I turned it around to face the wall, and he did not like that. I couldn't take my eyes from it. It felt as though if I did, it would move. I left the TV on so I could have some light, and I kept rain noise playing so I could feel more at ease. I've been told the story seems far-fetched, that I'm dramatizing it, but this was real. And no, I do not have health issues relating to sleep paralysis. I had it once as a kid, and I know how it feels. This wasn't that. I woke up to the noise being turned off, and an 8-foot-tall black misty figure loomed over me in the corner, directly in front of the mirror. He had a top hat and wore a trench coat. There were 2 glowing red dots where his eyes would be, but it seemed it was behind the misty black. My TV had a clock on it, and it read 3:33. I was completely frozen, yet I could move. I stared at him in shock, and as he took steps closer to the end of my bed, I felt suffocated. I was being pushed into the bed. I started saying Bible scriptures, and the only thing I knew to do was call onto my grandfather. It got hotter and hotter in my room until I turned my head and looked at my teddy bear with my grandfather's ashes in it. I didn't know you could do that with ashes. That's cute. I begged him to help me, and as soon as I turned back to face him, he vanished, and I felt cold again. I felt my body lift up from the mattress, and I looked at the time. It had been 10 minutes within what felt like only 1. I cleansed my room after that, and it was one of the worst experiences I'd had with him. I haven't felt that negative energy in my home since, though I know something is still here. Story number 2. I'll just get right into it. Last November, my family and I flew to the Florida Keys for vacation. Unfortunately, our time was cut short due to a hurricane. It was supposed to hit the day we were flying out, so we decided to make the 22-hour drive back. Once our trip started, my family decided to rent an Airbnb in Chattanooga, Tennessee as a halfway spot. The plan was to get a few hours of sleep and then get back on the road bright and early. We were set to arrive around 1 a.m., however, we got a flat tire, and it set us back about 2 hours. I got to looking at the area around the Airbnb, and to my surprise, we were going to be staying in the Appalachian Mountains. Arriving at 3 in the morning, instantly I had a gut-wrenching feeling. I'm no stranger to paranormal experiences, especially figures, and I'd heard all kinds of stories. But I tried to stay calm and not mention anything to my family. They don't believe in anything beyond the bases of this world. Me, however, well, I was worried the rest of the way, until we finally arrived. When we pulled into the driveway, I grabbed my shower bag and ran inside. To my surprise, all of the curtains were drawn back. I ran around closing every single one. I focused my gaze on the ground, too scared to look up. I was so scared. Eventually, my body caught up to my mind and I couldn't fight sleep any longer. I turned on a lamp and tried to snooze. Why can I not say the word snooze? I'm like, snooze? I decided to turn on a lamp and tried to snooze for a few hours, but every time I laid my head down, I would be falling asleep and my ears would start ringing. I was so scared I refused to open my eyes, afraid of what was around me. I guess at some point I had finally somewhat fallen asleep, but it didn't last long. I was awoken by screaming, like a long drawn-out scream. It was almost as if it was just in my head, like I was the only one that was experiencing it. I was frozen with fear for what felt like forever. Eventually, I opened my eyes and reached over to my cousin's bed, shaking her to see if she was awake. She wasn't. I think at this point, I had realized whatever was going on was just happening to me. So I closed my eyes and didn't open them until everyone else woke up. When we set off in the morning, I asked everyone how they slept, and no one mentioned hearing anything. I tried to mention what happened to me, but they shrugged it off as a bad dream. but I don't think it was. I don't know what happened, but boy was I glad to be out of there. Story number 3. My name's Allie. Me and my boyfriend Jack just moved to our new place like 2 months ago. It's on 40 acres on a heavily forested property in Central California. I've been a follower of yours for a while and I'm very interested in paranormal stuff, but I have a huge fear of walkers. When we moved here, I started talking about them with my boyfriend and he never heard of them before, so I kind of told him everything I knew. It's also important to note that we have a wood-burning stove in our house that we use as our primary heat source, so that means chopping wood just about every day. My boyfriend is the only one who does this. Well, tonight it didn't get cold in our house until late, so he went out to chop wood at around 1 a.m. While he was out there, he figured he'd chop a bunch of wood so he wouldn't have to chop any for tomorrow, so he was out there for around 45 minutes. It's also important for you to know that when he chops wood, he stores it in a big concrete slab right next to our house, and directly behind that slab / our house is a huge clearing with the creek running on either side. He came inside tonight completely freaked out, and the following is what he explained to me. While he was out there was a couple of owls he heard hooting back and forth to each other, and the crickets were going crazy along with frogs in the creek. He said it was super cool listening to the owls talk back and forth for almost an hour. Well, right as he was getting to the end of chopping and was about to come inside, he said everything went dead quiet at once. All the owls stopped, all the crickets stopped, and the frogs all went quiet as well. A couple seconds later, he heard a loud and distinct whistle come from the back of the clearing in the trees. He said it kind of sounded like a whistle when someone puts both their pinkies in their mouths and whistles loud. He immediately remembered what I had told him about walkers and quickly gathered all the woods and calmly went back into our house. He didn't turn his back in the direction of the noise. Basically, what I'm wondering is, are there even walkers in California? Yes. And if there aren't, what do you think that whistle was, and why did everything go quiet? It was. Also, I forgot to add that right before he came inside, I had fallen asleep and had a very weird and vivid nightmare. I don't remember all of it, but I do remember in the dream, I woke up in my bed and Jack still hadn't come inside. So I got up to look for him and the rest is really fuzzy, but I do remember that something was in my house that was pretending to be my boyfriend. When Jack finally did come inside, he woke me up and was freaking out about what he'd heard outside, but I was also freaked out because I had just woke up in a panic. I don't know if this is important or not, but I figured I'd tell you about it. It's very important. That's definitely what that was. The fact that they had that nightmare confirms it. That's definitely what that was. And it was a powerful one at that. The fact that it was messing with both of you guys at once, it could have been more than one. All right, story number 4. I live in York County, Maine, and I used to own a house with my ex-wife. It was built in the early 1800s and was the residence of the town doctor and veterinarian. I'm not sure if they were the same person, wife and husband, or what. I could never find out much about it. The house was on 55 acres and had an attached barn with 10 stalls and a tack room. The barn was pretty much empty and we used it for storage mostly. The whole time we lived there, we had experiences. We saw lights in the sky, heard things, seen things. I'm pretty sensitive, not anywhere near what people would call a medium, but when I have a bad feeling, my friends have learned to listen. My wife just hated being there by herself. I told her if anything's going on, watch the dogs and I'll let you know. It probably didn't help that I worked very late, usually not getting home till around 3 or 4 in the morning. Winter, February 21, I want to say, we separated after a pretty lengthy period of trying to make things work. She started to cheat on me, and when she left, she took my dogs. We had 4, but I came into the marriage with 2 of them. I was just full of anger, misery, and dread. We decided to sell the house, and I lived there for 2 months cleaning it out, making repairs, and things like that. She eventually gave me my 2 pups back, but the whole time I was alone, I was on edge and seeing and hearing things. I saw my mother, who had been passed for years at this point, and never stepped foot in that house. In the spare room we were going to make a nursery. I actually started to remodel this room, and when I stripped the wallpaper, there were carvings in the wood. Things like, "Help me, they hear you." It was chilling, I'm not sure why. The most terrifying thing was when I got home from work one night. It was early for me, around 11:30. I'd just gotten into an argument with my ex, and I was feeling pretty down and pissed. Anyway, nothing was amiss when I got home. Driveway gate was locked, no alerts on my Ring camera. I get out of my truck and take a few breaths to clear my head. I hear her voice from the barn. "Andy?" I know it's her voice. I'm like, what is she doing here? I approach the barn, turn on the light, which only lights the doorway to the barn. I answer her and ask what she's doing here and get no answer. Then I started to think. I didn't get any alerts on my phone from the Ring, and I had talked to her about 2 hours ago. There was no way she was driving an hour and a half north from Massachusetts to annoy me. Then I hear a dog whine. I know it's my girl Lucy. And then it cuts off. I'm immediately infuriated. I say, and pardon my French, "You effing B-word, you hurt my dogs, and I will do things to you that I cannot share on this platform." And take a few steps in. I can't see anything, but there's one spot near the wood pellets from my stove that is, it's a bit darker than anything else around it. It's hard to describe. Then I hear the sound in my head. It's like a scream, I guess, but so loud I nearly black out. I managed to get inside and can barely breathe. My heart is racing. I'm sweating like I just ran a marathon. My dogs are both awake but acting odd, very lethargic. I grab my bag. I work in a foundry and usually need to change my clothes twice a shift, and my dogs, and I scram. I literally toss them in the back seat and I'm gone. The house was sold a week later and I was happy to pay a cleaning crew to do everything that needed to be done. My boy Thor twitches in his sleep a lot, but I think it's dreams rather than anything malevolent. I think whatever's in there knew my dogs were the only thing stopping me from driving my truck off a bridge or into a wall or something, so it targeted them. What would have happened if I'd stepped further or if I'd fallen or something? My girlfriend's religious and says I was lucky that night. I drove her past that place one day and she started to cry. So I am not religious, I am spiritual, but I can also tell you that you were very lucky that night. I'm glad you got out, and I do wonder if the new owners experience anything strange because if the house wasn't cleansed, it's still there, Maybe the new owners cleansed it, but yeah, that's horrifying. I am so sorry. I bet, because they said they were in that, really bad situation with their ex. It was probably feeding off of all of that negativity and abuse, and yeah, unfortunately. Negative things feed off of negative energy. In other terms, they like to really kick you when you're down. All right, let's read the final story. I came across your videos and decided to reach out with an experience of my own. I'm from the UK, and since a young age, I've always been told I have a strong connection to paranormal activity and a stronger sense for it than others. This is a story in relation to what I believe you call the mimic. Oof. So I moved into this house when I was around 7, and from that point, I had a friend who was a little girl with tight blonde curls and an old-style pink dress. She lived in the attic, however, this isn't about her, I'm just mentioning her presence for context. Around the age of 11, I began to hear my name constantly being called around the house when I was alone. Each time, I'd reply with confusion, having never been informed not to. It stemmed from my first name being whispered as I walked up and down the stairs to being screamed by my mother. But by this time, I'd get to the top of the stairs, I'd see her keys are absent, and she's not home. There's also been instances where I've had this happen when everyone's in bed, or even right beside of me, and I know that no one said it, and I played those off as a trick of the mind. One night at around 15 to 16, I had a very vivid dream where I was being chased through the woods behind my house, constantly hearing my name being called all around me. I made the mistake both of looking from the tree lines and looking behind me. I saw a black shadow figure running after me before it began to chase from behind the trees until it managed to cut me off. When it did, it was right in front of me, and without a word, it raised its hand as if to slice down on me before I woke up in a panic. I would feel what felt like a harsh push against my back, and when I opened my eyes, the figure was still there. It remained there before slinking back into the shadowed corner of my room. However, it looked as though it stood in front of the shadow rather as a part of it. I was still dazed from sleep and remember waking my sister up when I mentioned my back hurting. She looked over and informed me that I had a fading red handprint outline on me. Following this, I had an experience while fully awake when I was washing dishes in my kitchen around 3 in the morning. I was playing music to save my anxiety as I was warned against being out of my room at 3. As I'm doing them, I felt a wave of dread fall over me and felt as though my music was echoing behind me. After a while, I turned over my shoulder to look and was greeted with the sight of a black figure peeking its head at me from around the corner, black hands holding the fridge before it slipped back and disappeared. I remember being in shock for a moment before having a rush to check the next room. I checked behind the curtains and all around, but there was no sign of anyone downstairs. There's no way someone could vacate upstairs without being heard. The same night, when I finally went to go upstairs, I heard whispering in my ear to move faster as I was walking up and a cold sensation. Upon this, multiple of my friends have refused to stay the night at my house after one sleepover. Just one. They told of being woken up to someone staring at the end of the bed at 3 a.m. and being unable to wake me up. I'm a light sleeper, so this doesn't make sense. One of my exes also had a dream in which they were attacked by this creature, lunging at them from the stairs and it melting my face and deforming me within their dream. About 3 of my friends have asked me why I was shouting at them and not replying after they replied, but I know I didn't reply back. This has calmed down significantly recently, but my room has always been the hotspot for discomfort, cold spots, and ghostly visits ever since I first heard the voices. Never answer the voices, y'all. Anyways, that is it for today. I hope they scared you as much as they scared me, and I'll see you guys next week.